Well, hello and welcome to Science Never Stops. I'm your host, Joseph Vick with the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Here today with NASA Marshall Space Flight Center guest, Servir Global Programs Manager, specializing in satellite remote sensing and Earth observation, Dan Irwin. Welcome, Dan, to Science Never Stops.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So let's get started with our first question. Could you please explain to our viewers exactly what the Servir program means and does, and tell us about some current NASA projects you're working on?
Sure. So Servir is a joint program actually between NASA and the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. And our whole goal is helping and empowering developing countries around the world to use NASA and other satellite data to address the many problems that they have. It might be related to agriculture and food security, water availability, disasters, land cover change, climate change, weather, and other. And it's a great opportunity to take advantage of the constellation of satellites that we have and really empower people to use that information to improve their lives, to improve their livelihoods, and ultimately make the world a better place.
So this is sort of a citizen science approach. So citizens like me and our viewers could sort of tap in and look at this science and see how we could use it in learning?
Well, it's actually more geared towards governments around the world. So we work with over 50 countries in Asia, in Africa, and South America. And what happens is the countries come to NASA and USAID, to the Servir program, and they say, listen, we've got a problem that we're trying to monitor ephemeral water bodies, these small water bodies, so pastoralists could find in times of drought where these water bodies are. And what we do is we work with the countries and actually co-develop, jointly develop solutions using satellite data, using apps, and build these tools that the countries can actually then deploy and improve the lives of the beneficiaries, like the pastoralists.
I know NASA uses a lot of acronyms, and I know Servir is an acronym as well. Could you tell our viewers what Servir stands for?
Sure. Well, Servir actually, when the program's actually 15 years old, I started it 15 years ago. And at the time, it was a Spanish acronym for, in Spanish, Sistema Regional de Visualización y Monitoreo, or Regional Visualization and Monitoring System. But as the program evolved, we just used the acronym Servir, which is also the Spanish, French, and Portuguese verb to serve, which is ultimately what we do through serving knowledge, serving data, and serving society.
So we got our science and language lesson this morning. So with that takes a lot of passion and dedication and sort of a focus for educational means. Could you tell us a little bit about your educational background and how it helped to obtain your current NASA position?
Sure. So my background is in environmental science and geographic information systems. As I joined NASA, I saw incredible science, incredible research, and I think that the opportunity was, through the Servir program, was to really bring that together and create this new program. So I think that as I've grown as a scientist, I think that some additional skills that have been absolutely critical is some management experience, proposal writing experience, public speaking, and leadership. And those are some of the things that I learned in school, but if I could go back to school, I probably would have also honed in on those as well. But it's been a lifelong learning process at the same time.
Well, growing up, was there a certain class, extracurricular activity, mentor, or experience that helped to shape your career path?
Sure. I think, great science teachers were absolutely critical to my career path, and I was always inspired by amazing teachers. I do think, though, there's one experience that I had. It was actually at summer camp. I was at a summer camp when I was probably about 10 years old, and the director of the camp was talking about trying to find an old barn that was on the property and that he had flown over the area in a small airplane, a Cessna, and could actually see the outline of this old barn from the sky. And it was amazing because we were in the field and we were walking and you really couldn't see anything. And then he showed us some of the aerial photographs and you could see the barn right there. And it just blew me away. And that really inspired my passion. So I was taking what I was learning in science class at school, and then this incredible experience had happened, and then kind of bringing those together, and that kind of inspired me in this path of satellite remote sensing. And I actually, for many years, supported a program at the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, a space archaeology program where we used satellite data to find unrecorded Maya archaeological sites in Central America and places like Guatemala that had been hidden under the forest for over 1,000 years, and using that information to find these unrecorded sites and then work with the governments, because it's really a race against time, how they could actually protect those sites to avoid them from being looted, or they have so many fires, so you get these terrible wildfires that could actually burn the old temple mounds, and that destroys the lime plaster in them and they can collapse. And so it was that one experience that actually led me to the archaeological experience working with NASA. And then it's great to look towards, look at the past and really understand cultural history. But then my passion was, how could we use that information for today? And how can we use that to help people around the world? And that's really what led to the Servir program.
Now, backtracking a little bit, you had said earlier in your description of Servir, it was a constellation of satellite networks working together. So it's multiple satellites communicating with one another with ground ops. And then I assume there's multiple, field stations around the world that sort of receive this data and information and transfer. Could you sort of give a few more details about that communication network?
Yeah. So just to clarify, in Servir, we don't build the satellites. We don't create the constellation. What we do is we take advantage of them. So NASA has this incredible constellation of satellites. We're kind of in the golden age of satellite Earth observation. We have NASA satellites. We have other government agencies like NOAA. We have other governments around the world that are launching satellites. We have private sector satellites. So you have all of these eyes in the sky. They're collecting information. But the problem is, how do you take that information and then make something meaningful out of it that can really help countries around the world? So we sit kind of on that tail end of what are the needs in the countries, and then how do we work with the countries to take the satellites and kind of fill that gap and build applications and services that help the countries. So, I mentioned the one on the ephemeral water body mapping. We help with flood forecasting and flood mapping. And for example, there's a terrible locust outbreak right now in East Africa. And we're actually using satellite data, looking at soil moisture to help find the breeding grounds so the locusts can be eradicated before they proliferate. So we really sit on that end. Now, one of the things that's really important to mention, though, is that we've set up, and this is why it's so exciting to work with our partner, USAID, because working with NASA, we bring the science and the technology. With USAID, they're our development partner, and that's their key function. I mean, they're amazing. They work in over 100 countries around the world, and they have really enabled us to set up what we call Servir hubs around the world. So what we do is we partner with existing institutions in parts of the world. So for example, if you go to Kenya, if you go to Niger, if you go to Colombia, if you go to Nepal, and if you go to Thailand, that's where we have 5 of our Servir hubs. And they're made up of, and they're supported through USAID and through US government. And there you'll find existing institutions that we've partnered with and amazing scientists and researchers that we talk with every single day through video conference. And we're working together and we're literally building these solutions together, because ultimately our goal is to empower countries to help them on their self-reliance, and really it's that partnership that is, to me, the most important thing in working with amazing scientists and researchers around the world.
With this, I know Servir and talking and communicating with different areas around the world, I guess sometimes there could be some hiccups with communication or things. What would you say would be your biggest sort of career project setback, and what did you do to overcome it?
Yeah. Wow. I think the biggest career setback I've ever had was our first Servir hub, which was actually in Central America. That was an incredible success that we ran from 2004 to around 2012. Then we had some funding challenges and had to close down that hub, and it was hard because I was it's a region I care deeply about, and it was a big setback. I think I always say fall down 7, get up 8. That's a Japanese expression, and just keep going at it. And what's amazing is that it was an incredible setback at the time, but since that time, we've been able to actually build out the broader Servir network and really expand the network. And right now, we're actually looking at going back into Central America. So it's funny, I think it's so important always to take the long view. And at the time the sky was falling in my world. But it's knowing that you just got to keep pressing forward and look at other options, look at other opportunities and alternatives. And by building out the Servir network, we're able to strengthen other parts of this global network. And now, several years later, we're actually, I think, going back into the region in even a stronger position than we were before.
Great. That's good to hear. Now, who would you say is your favorite scientist and why?
Ooh, wow. That's a good question. I think it's narrowing them down. But, I would say probably George Washington Carver. And the reason why is because, one, he was, he did all his research, most of his research here in Alabama. But he was a scientist. He was an inventor. He was an environmentalist. And I think that he really embodied how to help, especially in the time, how to help poor farmers, how to use different types of crops like peanuts and sweet potato, and looking at byproducts such as dyes and starches and flours. And I think that ultimately, it's funny, he was doing this 100 years ago or more, and in a way through Servir we embody that same vision at a broader level by really serving. And I think that he truly set the stage for that, and just an incredible scientist and amazing person.
So he was boots on the ground and Servir is boots in space.
You got it. Yep. And he's a true inspiration.
Now, do you happen to have any special abilities, talents, or hobbies that might surprise people?
Wow. I do a lot of work in Central America for years, many years. I've built playgrounds in Central America. My wife is actually from Guatemala, so I've worked with local communities building playgrounds, and it's just one of the things that I love to do most. I would say that the sound of kids, laughing and at playgrounds is the same anywhere. You could go anywhere in the world and you just close your eyes and you hear that same excitement. It doesn't matter what language, what culture the kids are from, and so it's just my joy and my way of giving back by helping to build these community playgrounds and working with the communities. And again, it's that whole space to village vision, both through work and in my personal life as well.
Since you are current NASA working generation, do you happen to have any advice you would want to pass along to the next NASA career generation that's listening in?
I would say really interdisciplinary thinking is so critical. And that's why, earlier in the interview, I talked about this importance of sort of this broad education. It's great to know your science and to be a scientist, but you've got to be able to write. You've got to be able to write proposals. You've got to be able to communicate and really lead. And I think that those are critical assets to really truly be well-rounded.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add or say about the current Servir program where we could check out more information about Servir program online for those of us that are viewing in?
Sure. No, thank you so much. And it's really, it's great to be able to share. You know, so many people are familiar with NASA and what we do at NASA as far as, space flight and the amazing science and the amazing research that we do at NASA. And it's exciting to be able to talk about what we do in Earth science. And really, in fact, when NASA was founded in 1958, one of its goals was to study the Earth from space and use that information to advance science and use it for societal benefit. And we continue to do that today. And we're doing it through the Servir program. And for more information about Servir, you can go to servirglobal.net.
servirglobal.net. So make sure viewers check that one out. Learn all you can about Servir and the fantastic opportunities that it does for us here on Earth. Well, thank you again, Dan, for joining us this morning for Science Never Stops. And for all of our viewers watching, always remember, science never stops.